Hello everybody, welcome back to the Chico MMA channel. Today, I'm going to be going over my picks for the UFC Fight Night of February 4th, Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivac. Very understacked card, I do got to say. You know, not a lot of fights, not a lot of ranked fighters, not a lot of super, popular names on this card, but still looking forward to it nonetheless. I mean, there was no UFC event, yesterday, so today tomorrow it's gonna feel a lot better to just have anything at all from the UFC, honestly. So we're gonna move on to the first fight. We're gonna go into the first fight. Tatsuro Taira versus Jesus Aguilera. These are two fighters with very, very nice records. Tatsuro Taira being undefeated, Jesus Aguilera only having one loss. If we look at this guy's fights in the UFC, he is undefeated as well. Clearly, I don't know why I had to point that out. He has 2 wins over Carlos Candelario and CJ Vergara, both in 2022. His last fight was in October 15th, which was the same card as the Alexa Grasso versus Viviane Araujo undercard. He won by a second round armbar. Then you have a guy like Jesus Aguilera, only one loss in his career. He's won the Contender Series. This would be his debut. He won against Arison Fajeda. He won by a guillotine choke in the 3rd round. And his only loss was in his debut by a choke. So he's never been knocked out in his career either. He's got a lot of wins by choke. No wins at all by knockout. And if we look at Tatsuro Taira, he's a much more well-rounded fighter. A lot of wins by knockout as well as a lot of wins by chokes as well. So who do I think is going to take this one? I think Tatsuro Taira takes it, and I think he'll take it by maybe a unanimous decision. Both these guys, they're both killers. They'll both go after each other. They're both not willing to go out. So I think, and we've both seen them go to decision wins, even though they are both killers. So what I think is going to happen is, since they're both just very evenly matched up, I feel like, and they're both really good and they've both never been knocked out, and there's only one loss among the two of them, so I think it'll go to a decision because of that. I also think that Tatsuro Taira is just better on the feet. He does have a more well-rounded record and resume, so I feel like that's gonna do a lot in helping him beat Jesus Aguilera here, and I think he's going to take that win by a unanimous decision. We move on to Jun Young Park versus Tennis Talulin. If we look at the odds here, Jun Young Park, the slight favorite at -195. Talulin at +165. If we look at both of their records and resumes, Jun Young Park 15-5. Dennis Talulin 11-6. My bad. So it seems that Jun Young Park has the way better record. He's coming off of a 2-fight winning streak, one of them against Eric Anders, one of them against Joseph Holmes, which was a second round rear naked choke win. His last loss was against Gregory Rodriguez. Did that loss age well? Did it not? I think that'll be up to the viewer, especially after that last showing, which I'm very sad about. If we look at Dennis Talulin, he is coming off of a 1-fight win streak against Jamie Pickett with a knee to ground strikes. This was in September for UFC 279, and he is 1-1 in the UFC. Jun Young Park 5-2 in the UFC, being the more experienced fighter there. He's got more wins. He's got less losses. I think he's better in a lot of aspects of just the fight game. I think Jun Young Park will be able to. He might be able to take it to a decision, honestly. But the thing with Talulin, I don't know. I just feel like he doesn't got enough submission wins. He's got 2. He's got oh no, this is a loss. Yeah, he's lost by chokes before, multiple times. So Jun Young Park, a guy who has a lot of those chokes. He's got rear naked choke. He's got you know what? I'm full of shit because he doesn't have that many choke wins. And at the beginning of his career, he does. So I feel like, he brought that out recently for the Calvin Kattar Arnold Allen undercard fight. He won by rear naked choke there. I feel like now that he knows, like, I can still pull off those submissions even this much later into my career, I think he's going to experiment that in the second round. I think he's going to see what he can do in the first round, And if he's having trouble, he'll get some kind of submission in the second round. I think it'll be a rear naked choke. I think he wins by a second round submission. That's how I think it'll get done. That's how I see it happening. We move on to Ji Young Kim versus Mandy Bone. Ji Young Kim, the pretty favorable favorite at minus 285. Mandy Bone at plus 240. If we look at both of their records, Ji Young Kim 9-6 with 2 draws. Mandy Bone 7-2 in her career. If we look at both these guys, Fire Fist, Ji Young Kim, she is 3-6 in the UFC. Wow, that's wild. But if you do look at her last 4 fights, which is a 4-fight losing streak, 2 of them are against high-level competition. You know, Alexa Grasso decision, Molly McCann decision, Priscilla Cachoeira decision, Joseline Edwards, you know, and even that one was a split decision, so it was close. You know, it's a pretty bad losing streak, but it's not against terrible competition either. If we look at Monster Mandy Bone, she's 0-2 in the UFC. She's got 1 win in Bellator as well. She's lost to Ariane Lipsky and Victoria Leonardo. Her wins before that, I mean, she was on a big win streak. She was on a 7-fight win streak, you know, across the GMC promotion, also Bellator. Most of her wins come by unanimous decision. She's also got a few punches, you know, rear naked choke wins against people making their debuts. So it doesn't really count too much. Or of course it does count, but it's not something that I really look at necessarily. Another first round finish against an 0-1 fighter when she was 4-0 herself. When it does look like she goes against more experienced competition, she fumbles the bag. You know, 13-7, lost unanimous decision. She was undefeated at this time. 8-4, lost in unanimous decision. She's winless in the UFC currently. And Ji Young Kim has gone against those high-level competitions. She hasn't done super, super well. But in her most recent win, it seems like she was able to do decent, even though that was in 2019. So it's kind of, but I don't know. You know, it's kind of like, it's a very weird fight, this one. You know, just both on losing streaks. One of them is winless in the UFC. Who takes this fight? I feel like Ji Young Kim has just a lot more experience in her career. I feel like she's lost against the way better competition. Alexa Grasso fighting for a title, Molly McCann, someone who's had a hype train, and Priscilla Cachoeira, someone who's still in the UFC today. I feel like if I had to pick, I'll say Ji Young Kim by some kind of decision. You know, it could be unanimous, could be split. I wouldn't be surprised by either. I would be surprised by a finish. I feel like if both these girls really want it, they're just gonna go at it. But if they just want to lay back and chill, I feel like Ji Young Kim would just get the better of those slight exchanges in between. So I'll take Ji Young Kim by a decision. We move on to Hyung Sung Park versus Sunguk Choi. Now, no odds for this one. Okay, so we're just going to look at their resumes and their records. Hyung Sung Park. Oh, this is the 125 road to UFC. Okay, so this is the road to the UFC. Flyweight finals. So very big one here. 7-0 Hyung Sung Park versus 6-1 Sunguk Choi. The UFC have picked out such good finalists for this one. Not picked out good competitors, and now they have such good finalists, is what I mean. So he's had 1 loss in kickboxing. That was back in 2014. You know, we're not even gonna look at that. We're gonna look at his most recent fights and his most recent road to UFC wins. Obviously, you know, he got a first round finish in his first fight against a 6-2 guy. That's not bad. And then a rear naked choke win against a 6-3 guy. That's also not bad. So now he's in the finals, and his whole resume, his whole record, it looks pretty good. I want to say the resume, you know, 2-2, 4-4, and 5. How do you have 5 draws? That's wild. Bunch of debuting guys, but he showed that even with guys that are like somewhat on his level, he's able to, maybe not on his level, but somewhat similar records, you know, like meeting in the middle. You know, he's been able to put them out pretty early. If we look at Sunguk Choi, he's 6-1 in his career. He's got a few wins, most of them by unanimous decision. I think it's just his road to UFC wins that really got me thinking, you know. You got a guy who's finished both his guys in the first round by knockout and submission. Then you got a guy who's won both his fights by decision. So I think what's going to go on there in that aspect. And I've seen, you know, some of their, not the whole thing of their fights. I've seen some of their road to UFC fights. And if I had to pick, I'd probably say Hyung Sung Park by a first round submission. If I had to pick one, I think submission. I think he'll just catch Seung Choi off guard. Maybe, I think it was Sung Hyung Park or Hyun Sung Park who did that one move where he caught the guy off guard and did the submission. Cause I watched those fights, like last week, so I can't really remember, who did it or how, but I'm pretty sure if this was the guy, then I have it down here that round one submission for a reason, because I looked into these guys a lot. So I'm gonna trust myself from a week ago, and yeah, also the fact that this guy doesn't have any submission wins, and that's a big deciding factor for me. I think Hyung Sung Park is gonna do very well in the UFC as well. I can't wait to see what he does next, or Choi if he wins as well. We move on to Toshiomi Kazama versus Rinya Nakamura. Now, Nakamura is, man, he might be the next big thing. And I'm not just saying that because other people are saying it. I'm saying that because, bro, his fights. This is the road to the UFC bantamweight finals match. 6-0 Nakamura versus 10-2 Kazama. If we look at Nakamura right now, I mean, look at this guy. He's got that experience. His nickname is the Hybrid. Undefeated in his career. Only one win coming by way of a decision. He's got a lot of wins, not against the highest level opposition. And although, damn, what am I saying? Although a lot of them are very quick, that's the way this guy fights. I remember how this guy fights. This guy fights, he's very, I don't know how to say it, ecstatic. He's just he does a lot of flashy stuff, I don't know how to really explain it, but, all these finishes are coming super early. They're not against the highest level competition, but when you look at a 5-1 guy, it's not a terrible record. He's able to finish him pretty early too. And then guys that were chosen for the road to the UFC, he was able to put them out too by submission and by punches. So that's a pretty good one there. If we look at Toshiomi Kazama, he's got many medals. I mean, if you look here, wow. This is a very, very high level fight here. So it's tough to say, but he does have a loss, and it was recent. 6 seconds into the second round. Obviously, flying knee, that's got to put a lot of people out. But the fact that it was recent, and another fact is that it happened at all. 2-2 guy, but flying knee is a flying knee, and because of that also partners up with the fact that it did happen, and that his chin might be weaker from that because he might have been out cold. It was 6 seconds, so he was likely out cold. And you see here, oh yeah, ground punch, round 3 finish, round 1, round 2, just a bunch of finishes and only one decision in between. Then that flying knee happens. He has the road to UFC fight. He only has one because his other fight was canceled, and then it was taken to a decision with a guy I'm not even gonna try to say his name, but he's 27-11, so he's got experience, but he's fought those experienced guys before, I want to say like Yuki Kosaka, who he's beaten by arm lock. Maybe he wasn't as good, which I don't think he was, because this guy was actually chosen to be on the road to UFC, and I don't know. It's just I feel like he's not going to be the same as to that he was before. You can see all these finishes, then he gets finished badly, then his one win after that was just not the same. This happened in April. He got knocked out by a flying knee in April. In June, he was fighting road to the UFC. So I don't know. It just feels like the UFC picked him just so that, or no, I'm not trying to say anything. I feel like the UFC didn't pick the best guy in the best, not the best guy, but not the guy in the best state to fight. And that's what I think is going to happen, is that I think Nakamura will just finish this guy early, honestly. I have it down here, round 2 knockout, which I feel like that might be more possible. Let me look back at this guy's whole record. Left high kick. Yeah, against more experienced guys, he gets the finishes later on. So you know what? I'll say round 2 knockout. And it will not be a pretty one either, I don't think. It's just sad, but it's the name of the game. All right, we move on to Zhai versus Zhang Yang Li. If we look, they don't have odds. So no betting odds for them. We're just gonna go straight into their records and resumes. Jia Yi, 22-3. That's a very good record. Versus Zhang Young Lee, who's 9-1. Obviously, Jia Yi's got a lot more experience. He's number 1 ranked featherweight in China according to Tapology. That's pretty wild. That's a big deal. That's a pretty big deal. Jia Yi, if we look at his last few fights, he lost to the same guy. He lost to the same guy that Kazama lost to, and same like manner too. Round 2, brutal knockout early. Damn, this guy just be knocking people out. That's crazy. So since then, he's gone on a 5-fight winning streak. His road to UFC fights, one of them was a first-round rear naked choke. Very impressive. The second one against a guy with arguably worse record was a split decision. So not the best look, but we're going to move on. We're going to move on to Zhang Young Lee, 9-1. He is 7-1 in Road FC. He's on a 5-6 fight winning streak. Wow, very impressive. With some very impressive wins as well. His road to UFC, he's got 2 knockout wins in under a minute. I think this was another guy that I was looking at that was very flashy. Geez, if we just look at his entire resume, it's just very, very good. You got that one speed bump, unanimous decision loss in, like 5-6 years ago, like 5.5 years ago. But honestly, I feel like this guy's headspace is just different. He hadn't fought since 2019, and his last fight was, first round, 10-second knockout, right? He comes back 10 years later. No, not 10 years, damn. 3 years later, and keeps doing the same shit. So I feel like it's not going to be no different on fight night. Who do I got? I got Lee, but if I had to pick one, I'd say not armbar, submission. I'll pick submission, and I'll say round 1. I think he'll catch him off guard with something quick. If you saw this guy's highlight, go ahead and check it out. It's pretty wild. But yeah, this guy's got a lot of good wins on the ground, actually, especially recently. So I'm not too sure about submission, but I don't think he's got like a bad chin either necessarily. Definitely wasn't an issue for his last 3 fights, but I still think round 1 submission, because if it's not round 1 submission, maybe round 2, but I feel like it'll just be something that catches Yi so off guard that I feel like Zhang Young Lee is just gonna be a guy that's gonna be on hype. He's gonna make his rise in the UFC. That was for the 145 Road to UFC finals. We're not gonna move on to the 155. I forgot they had 155. You got an Indonesian fighter in Anshul Jubli, undefeated, and what country is that? No, that's Indonesia, and that's, hold up, I got the country wrong. India. Yeah, he's India, and then this is Indonesia. Yeah, okay, I got that wrong. So Anshul Jubli, I don't think they got odds on this fight either. No, they do not. Okay, so if you look at his fights, he's undefeated. He's got a lot of wins, but his road to UFC wins, he had 1 canceled fight, which was, I'm guessing, was the round of 8. And then his semifinals win was a win by split decision. Not a good look there. A lot of his wins came by unanimous decision, so it's not the best look. We move on to Saray, who is 13-2. He's 11-2 in One Pride MMA. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. Only one of them being a decision. Ground and pound, right hook, spinning back fist, straight right. This guy is super powerful, and I don't know. I just feel like he's gonna be the one to finally stop Anshul Jubli. I feel like if you look at this whole resume records, it's just so many finishes. His only losses are by submission, and that's something that Jubli doesn't have a lot of. He's got only 1 win by submission, and Saray's got many. Even though he's lost by submission a few times, he's gotten many, rear naked chokes. A lot of rear naked chokes, man. He's good with that. But he's also good on the feet, especially after 2020. In 2022, out of the 4 fights he had 3 finishes, knockouts, brutal ones as well. Straight right, spinning back his right hook. I mean, damn, this guy got power, and I feel like that's just going to be more than enough to finish Jubilee off. So I think Saray's going to take it. I think it's going to be maybe round 1 KO. I just feel like it's going to be something right off the bat that takes him out. If not round 1 KO, it could be any round, honestly. but I think it's just going to be something that catches him off guard. I think the road to UFC finales will all be pretty exciting. You know, they're all going to be decent fights. There's going to be maybe one that's not as good, but you know, that is what it is. We move on to Yusaku Kinoshita versus Adam Fugit, or Fugit. I don't know how to say his last name. They don't got odds on this fight. Kinoshita was another guy I was looking on. This is the next big guy probably as well. Kinoshita, yeah. A lot of people have been talking about this guy. A lot of people were talking about Kinoshita. I've been seeing around 6-1 in his career. He's had one loss in Ryzen. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. You know, one of them was by first round knockout. One of them was by third round knockout. You know, this is not Road to UFC anymore. I forgot. You know, he's making his debut in the UFC after this knockout win on the Contender Series back in August, end of August. And if we look at Fugit, he's 8-3. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He lost to Michael Morales by punches in the third round. Before that, he had a 4-fight winning streak, which was pretty impressive. But yeah, Michael Morales is still a pretty good competitor. You know, he's undefeated and he's been on hype. A lot of people have been talking about him recently. So it's not a terrible loss, but when we look at a guy like Kinoshita, who's likely going to have a similar kind of uprising, you know, he's going to be the next big guy. And, you know, he's violent, he's vicious. So if I had to pick one, I'd say Kinoshita. I'll say knockout in the third round. Yeah, I think I'm safe with that bet. Because you see when he goes against, you know, guys that are just a bit higher level, like Jose Henrique Souza. I think that's going to be similar to Adam Fugit, and he's going to get a finish, not in an early round, but more in the third round. I think an early round is still possible, though, but I'm going to just take the safe bet and say KO TKO third round. We're now in the main card with this fight. We move on to Doo Ho Choi versus Kyle Nelson. Hell yeah. Let's go. Doo Ho Choi making his return. That's always exciting. You know, the Korean Superboy, 14-4 in his career, 3-3 in the UFC on a 3-fight losing streak. You know, he hasn't fought since end of 2019. You know, unanimous decision lost to Cub Swanson. You know, it was a back and forth war. Jeremy Stevens, knockout lost to him. Charles Jourdain lost to him. Both punches. If we look at his wins, they're not against super high level guys either. You know, not especially, but as well as in the UFC. Even though they were pretty impressive wins, you can't lie. They were all 3 first round finishes. And then he got finished twice, and he hasn't fought since. So, I don't know. It's just a bit questionable. If we look at Kyle Nelson, I think this was the right guy to put up against Doo Ho Choi. You know, he's 1-4 in the UFC. It's an even worse record. You know, he's lost to guys like Diego Ferreira, who was once ranked at lightweight, Matt Sales. He got a knockout win in between that against Polo Reyes, which is not the best win. It's not a really good win at all, honestly. But then lost to Billy Quarantillo, which isn't a terrible win, but if you look at the way he lost, that put his lights out. That was 2020, though. He fought 2 years later against Jai Herbert, and it was a unanimous decision loss. He's very inactive, but one thing's for sure, he's more active than Doo Ho Choi. So I feel like if I had to pick one, I don't know. It would all depend on how Choi shows up. You know, if he shows up ready, hungry, active, without fear, and his chin holds up well enough, then hell yeah, he'll take that win. But I feel like if he's just lacking in one or a few of those aspects, or if he's just missing one entirely, Kyle Nelson will just be able to take it. I feel like Kyle Nelson, if he does win, the UFC might promote him for his next few fight night fights, you know, on the undercards and shit like that. I'll probably take Nelson by round 1 KO, just because I feel like, you know, a lot of those guys that they have a layoff and they come back, they just don't come back the same. I feel like Kyle Nelson might be able to finish him off. We've seen Kyle Nelson finish guys off like Polo Reyes, first round knockout, like Rezaie, you know, first round knockout, first round rear naked choke, split decision, which was 2016. Actually, these are 2017 wins, so I can't really look at these either. Yeah, not very reliable, but we can just say that, you know, even like a year apart, you know, 2017, 2018, and 2019, he can still get first round knockout wins. It's possible. Just when he fights higher level guys like Diego Ferreira, like Billy Quarantillo, who are more active, you know, it's tougher. and especially like Duho Choi, who's fought the higher level guys, in my opinion. But um, I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. Duo Choi, I feel like he's got the more experience, but if we're talking about recently, then Kyle Nelson just might take it. He might take it by first round knockout. It just depends on how Duho Choi approaches it, man. If he comes out and he's confident and his chin holds up and he's hungry, like I said, man, then my prediction is gonna be fuck. It's gonna be horribly wrong. And I'm not hoping he gets knocked out in the first round. I want Duho Choi to win because I want him to stay. But it's just the way that things happen sometimes is the way that it happens sometimes, and this is just my prediction. Definitely hope that it doesn't happen though, because Duho Choi's health is more important than some topology points. So, we move on to Marcin Tybura. I just realized I've been saying that name wrong, like a few days ago. Marcin Tybura. It's not Marcin Tybura. Marcin Tybura versus Blagoy Ivanov, number 10 versus number 15. If we look at their odds, do they have? They don't have betting odds. That's pretty interesting. This would be a pretty fun fight to bet on, honestly. If we look at Marcin Tybura, 23-7, very experienced. He's got a nice two nice belts there. 10-6 in the UFC, coming off of that very impressive win. Not really the performance itself, but the win was more, because Alexander Romanov was the next big thing. He was undefeated, and Tybura was able to beat him by majority decision. Completely derailed that hype train. Haven't seen nobody talk about Romanov since, honestly. His fight before that was a loss to Volkov, unanimous decision loss, so it's not a horribly bad loss. Before that, it was a 5-fight winning streak. Some of them were knockouts. The more recent ones were knockouts. He has a win over Sergey Spivac, who's also fighting on this card. 2020, but still, it's still on the record, so it's still pretty cool. For a guy that has been fairly inactive, it's pretty impressive how he was still able to beat a guy like Romanov. That's so impressive to me. That's so crazy to me, and that's just his experience. He's got that experience, and now he's fighting another experienced guy like Blagoy Ivanov. Baga. I don't know what that means, but Blagoy Ivanov. Such like a badass name, this guy is like a badass. 3-3 in the UFC. His last win was against Marcos Rogério de Lima for UFC 274 UFCVegas68. I remember watching that fight, honestly. I was very bored, to say the least, but it's okay. He lost to Augusto Sakai by split decision. Lost to Derek Lewis by split decision, which in hindsight is a pretty good loss. It could have gone way worse. Split decision still is not bad. One judge still had it for him. He's beaten Taito Iwasa before. He's beaten Ben Rothwell. Lost to Junior Dos Santos, which, isn't a terrible loss. But, Taito Iwasa did have that downfall in 2019, so it's not it's not a super good win either. It's just a win that aged, fairly well. But he hasn't been the most active either. The only difference is, Marcin Tybura in his inactivity is still able to beat guys like Romanov. And in Blagoy Ivanov's inactivity, he's, going to boring decisions with Rogério de Lima. So, who do I think has got this fight? I think it's just so obvious that Tybura takes it. I don't really see a win for Ivanov possible, honestly. But if I had to pick, I'll pick Tybura. I'll pick it by decision. I think it'll be somewhat lackluster. It won't be super entertaining. It'll be okay. There might be one or two shots that the commentator booth goes, oh, and all that shit. But I don't know. We move on to Dawoon Jung versus Devin Clark. Now, this is the co-main event for this thing. We have Dawoon Jung here, but even at the weigh-ins it said Dawoon Jung, so I don't know which one is the correct one to say. Or maybe it's both. But Jung here is 15-3-1. His last fight was against Justin Jacoby. It was a first round knockout loss. This is the most recent fight in July. He also has wins against a lot of tough guys like Kennedy and Nzechukwu. He's also got many wins before that. He's got a split draw to Sam Alvey, which is very, very questionable. But before this loss to Dustin Jacoby, ranked fighter, he was on a sizable winning streak, you got to say. And if we look at Devin Clark, the Brown Bear, 13-7, 7-7 in the UFC. I mean, Jesus, what a record, you know. His most recent win. I mean, his most recent win. Okay, yeah, his most recent win was against William Knight. Same for. Oh no, never mind. He got that Njakuku win, so I got that wrong. It was it was a third round knockout. It was in 2022. His most recent fight was against Azamat Morzakinov, which was ground and pound finish. He's lost to Ion Kutalaba. He's lost to Anthony Smith, which is a terrible loss. Beat Alonzo Menifield, which is a pretty good win. He lost to Ryan Spann, which aged well, so it's not super bad. He's still 7-7 though. That's the thing. He's been knocked out 3 times in the UFC, and I don't know, man. He's been submitted as well. Daun Jung has, he's got that standing guillotine. He's got that power. He can knock people out. He's got good. He's got, how do I say it? Good striking. No, not good striking. He's decent on the feet, and I think on the feet he'll be able to do enough to Devin Clark. I don't know if I see no KOs. I don't know. I have to think about it because I have it down here, but standing elbows. He was able to knock out Njakuku. I think I haven't seen these fights. That's the thing. So I have to just assume that he's been going at a higher pace. Like for Daun Jung, I didn't watch none of his fights. Or for Devin Clark. I kind of overlooked this one, honestly. If I had to pick one, I'll go. You know what? I'll just go with what I have here. I'll trust whatever I had down initially. I have Daun Jung by a finish in the second round, specifically on the feet. Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivac. Now, I did my research on these guys. I did well enough research. Man, this is a tough one for me. This is easily the toughest one, for me to pick. If we look at Derek Lewis, man, he's 26-10, the Black Beast. He's 17-8 in the UFC. This guy got experience against the highest level fighters. 2-fight losing streak, both knockouts, brutal knockouts. If we look at Sergey Spivak, 15-3, he is the polar bear. He's on a 2-fight winning streak, both knockouts. It's kind of like the opposite of Derek Lewis's, losing streak. Sergey Spivak is like completely different. He beat Augusta Sakai. He beat Greg Hardy. Not super impressive wins, but a win is a win. They're both ground and pound wins. The thing with Sergey Spivak, and even if you look at his last few fights, he's only really losses. And if we look at the last 2 years, his only losses were Marcin Tybura and Tom Aspinall, which are the highest level guys. He's beaten Olenek, he's beaten Vendera, he's beaten Carlos Felipe, beating Greg Hardy, beating Augusta Sakai. I think all of those guys, I don't think any of them are on the UFC roster anymore, honestly. So that's got to put him down a little bit. Yeah. My thing just completely stopped. My screen froze. But also, Sergey Spivak has a win over, for example, Taito Ivasa. Again, it was in 2019, so it's not a super big win. We're going to look more here for his most recent fights. I don't know, man. It doesn't seem like he got that power. Those ground and pound he does, it doesn't seem, it's not very powerful. It wasn't able to put Greg Hardy out cold either. It's just the referee had to step in. But if I had to be honest, Sergey Spivak, he is a lighter heavyweight. He weighed in 10 pounds lighter than Derek Lewis did. He weighed in 255. I also got my weighing prediction wrong. I said 240 something, and Derek Lewis was 265. So I got that shit wrong. I think most people on the internet got that shit wrong. But Sergey Spivak, if we look at, his fights, he's so strong. This guy he don't got too much power, but he got strength. He's able to just grab people and then just, lift them up over his shoulder and then slam them. He did it to Greg Hardy, and Greg Hardy's fucking big, bro. Greg Hardy is so big and he's so heavy, especially off season. That guy gets so big. He gets over 300 pounds. That's how big he gets. He weighs in his boxing matches 320 pounds. That's how big he is, bro. Heavy guy, pressure, dense, thick guy like Greg Hardy, and a skinnier, lighter Sergey Spivak was able to just slam him, and without much of an issue either. I think if Sergey Spivak decides to go for that, I think he'll be able to have a lot of success on the ground. Derek Lewis is good at defending takedowns. I haven't seen him defend those kind of like pick up slams and shits. If Sergey Spivak can pick up and slam Greg Hardy, he can do it to Derek Lewis. The only problem is, of course, the power. I think that's where the difference in this fight really lays. It's not going to be the ground game. Obviously, that's going to be a difference. But I think Derek Lewis, we've seen him get out of tight spots before. Sergey Spivak is more, experienced in the top game. He's going to be better. But we've seen Derek Lewis get out of those tricky spots that not many people could get out of. Derek Lewis, a very heavyweight, a thick guy, slow guy, able to get out of those positions, without much of an issue. We've seen in his past fights. So I think if he just sticks to that, if he just stays calm, stays composed, doesn't get overexcited, just uses his power, counters well, and avoids the takedown even. And even if he gets down to the ground, if he just gets out of that shit, he'll be able to win that fight. I think he'll be able to just get a knockout. So now with more research on this fight and knowing what I know now about both these fighters, I can make a comfortable pick that, in my last Derek Lewis Sergey Spivak prediction video, I put Derek Lewis by, I think it was round 3 finish, or it was round 1. I think I put round 3 finish I put it for Spivac. Or did I put it for Lewis? I put it for someone. But knowing what I know now, has to be Derek Lewis, knockout, 3rd round. Sticking to my guns with that one. If we look at the betting odds, Derek Lewis is the slight underdog at -190. Sergey Spivak, plus 190. Sergey Spivak, -225. Number 7 versus number 12. Man, I think it's gonna be somewhat similar to like what happened to Curtis Blades maybe, but it's not. I don't think it's gonna be as brutal. I think it's gonna be maybe some ground and pound. I don't think he'll be out cold because we haven't seen that yet. But I think it'll still be, like we've seen him get knocked out early, like before. Even as recent as September of 2021. Just about a year ago. So I don't know. If I had to pick one, I'll pick Derek Lewis. I think if Derek Lewis, we've seen the whole transformation, even though it didn't look like that at the weigh-ins. I saw him running. He did cardio, man. That's enough for me, honestly. I think he wins this fight. Hell yeah, let's do it. I'm comfortable with this one. Guys, bit of a longer video here. Didn't mean to make it this long. I apologize. If you stuck through the entire video, if you held up with my bullshit and my stutterings and my slip-ups and here and that, thank you. I appreciate you. I want to thank you all for the support on the channel. Whoever's listening, the support recently has been really good. Please subscribe if you can. We've been doing good with the subscribers. I've been seeing a lot of success there. Thank you all. And let's hope I actually get, the main event of a fight night correct this time. Because if you don't know, the 2 main events that were in January, I got them both wrong. So let's hope in February I at least get a win.